Now, Republicans just released a set of talking points on Ukraine, and already they've essentially been destroyed. According to Bloomberg, the talking points were distributed by Republican staffers on the House Intelligence Committee, and they are as follows. And let's see if we can easily defeat these ridiculous talking points. The July 25th summary of the call between Trump and Ukraine President Zelensky shows no conditionality or evidence of pressure. I want you to do me a favor. I need you to do me a favor. The United States has been very, very good to Ukraine. Those are things in the official memo, probably in the transcript, if we were allowed to see it, if it were not locked up in a secret server. More. Both Zelensky and Trump have said there is no pressure on the call. Okay, we'll get to that one, right? The Ukraine government was not aware and a hold of U.S. security assistance by the time of the July 25th call. That's a maybe, right? Trump met with Zelensky, although not in the Oval Office, and U.S. security assistance flowed to Ukraine in September of 2019, both of which occurred without Ukraine investigating Trump's political rivals. So there are the talking points. Now, here's the thing. I think they're crap. Again, in the memo, Trump asked for a favor that was contingent on two things. Number one, finding the CrowdStrike server. That CrowdStrike server, by the way, that feeds into a conspiracy theory, and Donald Trump, you know he loves his conspiracies, that would prove that it was somehow not the Russians that tried to interfere in the 2016 election, but the Ukrainians, and probably on behalf of the Democrats, which would, of course, get that whole nasty Mueller thing off his record. And so we could say, the Mueller thing, total witch hunt, total sham. I should get 2 extra years in my presidency. He has actually said that before, too. So I'm just saying. Now, Burisma is the second thing. And, of course, involved with that, Hunter Biden getting $50,000 a month and Joe Biden pushing out a prosecutor. Now, by the way, that prosecutor that was pushed out by not just Joe Biden, but a lot of people, that's the international position at the time, they pushed out that prosecutor because he refused to investigate corruption in Ukraine. The very thing that Trump seems to be, I don't know, very concerned about. Now, we also know from testimony that the foreign aid was conditional to Zelensky announcing an investigation into those two things. Now, the thing is that the president couldn't really hold that up for that long. That money was already passed through Congress and should have went to Ukraine immediately. So now, that money, like I said, conditional into the investigations. Those investigations would have helped Donald Trump personally. It really wouldn't have been fighting actual corruption, and it wouldn't have been pushing U.S. national security interests in the area. In fact, the money that was supposed to go to Ukraine, that eventually did, that was for U.S. purposes to, defend against more Russian incursions into Ukraine. So now, clear extortion, right? So now the fact that Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, said, "Oh no pressure at all, no pressure at all." Well, it's funny because when you go back to the memo, he kept stating, "Oh, by the way, I stayed at Trump Tower, and I really appreciated what you were saying. I really appreciate your campaign." He had his lips firmly planted on Trump's ass. You don't do that unless Trump has something that you want or need very, very badly. And what Zelensky needed was to Russia not come and F up his shit. I'm just saying that's probably what would happen without the U.S. security assistance, because they already did that. And so in Crimea, so that's okay. Moving on, right? So now Zelensky says no pressure because, again, if you go against Donald Trump, you might not actually get that security assistance. And so it's like, I got to work with this guy. Not only that, even if that's not true, okay, well, what about at home? What about facing your own voters? What about facing your own fellow government officials, right? Who knew that you could be bullied by Donald Trump into doing basically his bidding in order to get that money. How weak will you look if you're a leader that admits that? How weak, right? And so you don't want to admit it. You don't want to say, oh, no, totally bow to pressure. No, you're going to say, no pressure at all. What are you talking about? I was doing this for the best of the country. Right. So, no, he's not going to admit it now. Now, as for Ukraine not knowing about the aid being frozen by the time of that call, again, that's a maybe because we're not exactly sure when they knew, and it's really hard to find out. That said, recent testimony from Laura Cooper, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Russia, Ukraine, and Eurasia, did testify that Ukraine did actually know about the freeze by at least early August. And so that leaves a window of about a couple of weeks where we're not sure if they actually knew about the freeze by the time of that call or not. So, and yes, Trump did eventually meet with Zelensky. They eventually did release that military aid. But here's the thing, right? The White House released that aid after members of Congress were up in arms about it. And so they were really, really upset about this. In fact, according to the New York Times, only at the last minute after key members of Congress erupted in protest over Mr. Trump's actions, which basically took the power out of Congress's hands, which did pass that aid package and put it into Trump's hands. And of course, they don't exactly like it when you take away the power for them to do their job. Congress doesn't. Who knew, right? And so the White House did release that aid without a public investigation. So those are the talking points. And I think I actually did a pretty good job at debunking those. But in reality, you're either going to believe me or not. And it depends greatly on whether or not you believe the facts over what Donald Trump and the Republican Party say. And look, I don't know about you, but I don't trust Donald Trump. I'm pretty sure most of you watching don't. And I'm sure some of you watching who are probably hate watching right now probably do trust him. And so don't believe any word that I say. And I get it. And I trust that the Democrats that are working, that are looking into this, they're not buying these talking points and they don't trust Donald Trump. But again, the thing is true on the other side as well. Republican voters, at least the 62% of them that will back Trump no matter what, they either don't believe this or they don't care, even if they believe that it is true. And for those people, it's a cult mentality. And so these talking points won't convince anybody who doesn't already believe them. But the reverse is true. The facts will also not convince Trump voters. And that's the important thing. Because the overall thing on this impeachment inquiry and impeachment itself is the numbers game. And this is going to factor into the number game that Republicans are playing right now. And by Republicans, I specifically mean Republican members of the Senate. We already know that the Senate Republicans, there's a lot of them that don't like Donald Trump. 35 of them admitted that they would vote, if it were secret, to remove President Trump. Now, that's over half of the Republicans in the Senate. That's a large, I believe there's only 52 Republicans in the Senate have a small majority, right? 35 of them say, yeah, we would impeach and remove. Okay. But see, here's the thing. The reason that they don't do that, or they need a secret ballot, is because they are afraid of the voters. So, like craven politicians they are doing political calculations to see what the best course is for them to be able to keep their jobs and their positions. And see, these Republicans, they have no spine, no core, and no value because, as usual, they are craven politicians who serve an increasingly rabid, fact-free, cultish base. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYT Nation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.